never met this man. No, we've done several projects together.
Just go buy something else. Cowboy Bebop. Got it. Oh my god. I got a picture of some tickets. Oh my god. The selfie of a selfie. I'm being a hardcore fan. You're telling me, dude. No, I don't want to do this.
Part of this movie to our personal stuff.
It's very cool, man.
And this is colliding here at Katsucon.
This panel is called People Who Have Taken Jobs from Sonny Strait.
Oh, that's brutal. It was going so well till
You've taken some
It
back.
hasn't even started.
You've taken some back.
Oh, that's true. I took it back from Tony. That's right.
Sure.
Tony, I'm sure you'll be playing Lupin again, though. It's like Lupin ping
Yeah,
pong.
I'm talking about Danganronpa. You guys stole Danganronpa from me.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
I'll say right now.
Then you're forgiven.
Yeah.
Take it from Tony. That's a good name for a song.
Take it from Tony. Take it from Tony in a big way.
Is everyone here who wants to be here?
Coral, yes, please take your head off. You're blocking.
If I had a nickel for it, people told me that. Big old stupid head.
So in person, we don't look alike.
No.
People say, you look just like...
You look identical. What are you talking
Really think Steve? No, I look like the Texas version of you. The one that doesn't have to work out because he doesn't live in LA.
Oh, man. Oh, we can start?
We can start? I think we have. This is the panel. Just us,
This is
BS.
it, guys. All we got.
Kind of all you get. Is there a microphone for questions, too?
Does anyone have questions?
Speak up. This
That's all the mics we can get. Okay, nothing but the finest.
nothing but the fun.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Our friends at Netflix have jumped into the anime.
yes. Yay, yay, and yay.
Are they pumping more money into the industry?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's-
more than that. It's providing a mass area of mass market rather than narrow, where people can see what we do.
Yeah.
Which means it's adding to the popularity. It's creating more work for us. It's
And continuing to legitimize.
These guys can hardly sleep. They got so much work.
Yeah, it's 20
So-
new shows every 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The follow-on question to that is, in Japan, animators are notorious now. Is this going to have any effect on their pacing being?
Well, voice actors here are notoriously underpaid.
At least in anime they are.
No, this sweater was given to me by a guy on the street.
The rate for voiceover on anime is almost the same as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, just a
It
little
really
higher.
hasn't changed. You can't make a living unless you do a lot of it or something else.
Or
So-
other kinds of voice acting. But we don't know how it affects the artists there. I do know that the companies are getting more licensing money. So presumably, if they are good corporate citizens, they'll share some of that. But I don't think so.
Plus, they're getting more work, but I don't know about the rates either.
Plus, I was once told by the president of Tatsunoko Productions, the people behind Speed Racer and Robotech and all that, and he says, we don't really care about the American markets. We make product for Japan. The Japanese way in Japanese storytelling. And if you guys want to, that's great. It's extra for us, but they really are focused on that. So I'm not sure how much the artists really know what's going on here.
Yeah, but
Disney
American-
animators are notoriously getting less money too, right? Disney animators? What do they make?
No?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're a lot of them are in Indonesia.
Let's throw some money. This is a weird subject for this panel.
I know. Let's do something happier.
Don't call on him, he'll cry. All right, go and call on him.
Yeah, so I already made a I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming. I know it's fun. down this time so I can actually create sentences.
We definitely need a mic for him.
Yeah.
He's got a whole speech. Oh, here we
It's
go.
not a long speech at all.
Stand up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Face the audience.
Hey everybody, hope you can hear me. So, whether you know it or not, you have had an impact on thousands of kids and grown-ups' lives, and I would sneak down the stairs.
It's all good.
I'm sure a lot of people would sneak downstairs to just see you guys, and to watch your voices and the characters that you play, including both Toms. I mean, you guys were the voice that created me and created thousands of kids and grown-ups, and the voice that inspired me and pulled me through many of my awkward years in middle school and high school, and right now, it's been awkward. And just through some really tough times. And your voice has provided a gateway to anime and introduced me to a whole new world that I now share with my wife. And you've inspired me to write and be who I really am, and I'm sure you've inspired that for all these people here. My question to all three of you is, what or when was the first time that you realized that your voices and the characters you personify actually had an impact or inspired someone around you or the people who enjoyed your work throughout the years? What was the first time you really felt that?
Great question.
Yeah, thank you.
The question is, the first time we realized that our work inspired other people? It was probably when I read this fanfic about me and Chris Salmon. It's very inspiring. It inspired me too. Now, I think the first time I realized that we had an impact on the culture was when we went to Comic-Con for the first time. And we didn't know what to expect. At the time, Dragon Ball Z was #1. We was like, that's just so abstract, right? And then we showed up at the convention, and we showed up for our line, and it was out. It was just miles long, you know. And I was like, holy shit, this is strange, you know. But every convention, somebody comes up and says that we've done something, and probably the one that will almost make me cry if I don't fight it was a guy who was a soldier, and he came up to me at a convention, and he asked me to sign something, and he said that he and his buddy served together, and they watched Dragon Ball Z. They related to Krillin because they were just as scared as he was, and his friend didn't make it, and that he was going to take that and put it on his grave, the thing I signed for him. So that was probably the most impactful one.
How do I follow that? Wow.
So with
The first impact was actually the very first con that I attended, which was in Sacramento, and this was back in the old days when they were doing Robotech, and we had just come out with a few things from LA Hero, and the first impression that I made out there was basically ruining people's lives because they weren't used to hearing dubbed animation, dubbed anime, and so the first guy that stood up to ask his question prefaced it by saying, "You've destroyed the art form, and please stop it," and he threatened my life. And so I stopped going to cons for about 10 years, and then finally I got back in the circuit, and I really, when the positive things started coming in, I was really insecure, and I really couldn't take it in, and so I couldn't really grasp what they were saying and really absorb it until I went to a con in New Zealand several years ago. And this big Maori-looking dude comes up to me. He's got tattoos on his face. A scary-looking man, huge guy. And he starts, a little tear comes down his eye. And he's standing in front of me at my signing table, and he says, my son is autistic, and when he was 8 years old, up until the point that he was 8 years old, he was nonverbal. And he would rock in the corner, and we'd grunt, and we'd sort of communicate. We'd have sort of shorthand. But there were no words, and all I really wanted was to hear words out of his mouth. And all of a sudden, one day, something comes on the TV, and he runs over to the couch, and he sits there, and he's transfixed by what he's looking at. And the father sits next to him, and he goes, what are you looking at? And the little boy, for the first time, just goes, shh. And the father goes, oh my God, it's a response. And then he just sits there and patiently waits, and it cuts to commercial, and the little boy looks at him, and he goes, I like that, Daddy. in perfect English. This little boy had been processing all these thoughts and feelings for however many years kids do that. But at 8 years old, he said his first words, and it was a reaction to a show called Digimon. I played a character, Katsucon, and there was something about the character that unlocked something in his brain. And from that point forward, they would sit as a family on the couch and watch this together. And he opened up and started talking about all the thoughts and feelings that he'd been processing his whole life. His father got him together with otaku groups, and he could actually express his love for anime. He'd been seeing it for years, and actually there were a lot of different shows that he liked, and he spoke the language and realized that there were other people like him. So at this point, this is 4 years later, the boy was 12 years old, and he just said thank you, and he hugged and we cried together. The next day, I see about 20 people down in my signing line, this huge man towering over everybody, and I go, oh my God, come here! And I come down from the table, and he brought the boy, who's now 12 years old, with his sister and the wife, and the four of us stood crying together and hugging. And he was just saying, you know, I feel like I'm a part of this world now. I feel like I can function. It's really high functioning, and was doing really well in school, was finding things that he could really lock into and do well. And it changed my whole life. And it changed me on a cellular level. And I took that with me, and I remember that every single time I do a role, no matter if it's some killer in a show or some little tiny character that's really happy all the time. I always have that in mind, that there's somebody on the other side of this that might be affected. And it's profound, and it's humbling.
I really can't add to that, except I had a similar situation with soldiers that you had, and at the same convention, I had this convention had walked up to me and said, "There's a friend that would like to meet me. He's a big fan, but she's has a lot of anxiety, can't be in a crowded building. Can I meet her outside?" So I went outside and said hello, and she was very quiet, looking at her feet, very shy, couldn't speak at all, and I just basically said, "Would you like a hug?" And she nodded, and so I hugged her, and she burst into tears, and then we talked for a while, and it was she was lonely, and this was a moment that she found her friendship in the anime she watched, and not me, but my voice represented that to her and the characters that I played, and that's really something, and so that's where I became very keenly aware of how we touch people, and how much of a privilege it is, and responsibility sometimes, but certainly a privilege, and one of the perks that came unexpected, to be able to do what you love, and then to have that be a perk is a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Really good question.
That's great, thank you.
Okay. Into directing, yeah. All right, so we're talking about what's it like working on Hunter x Hunter, the current Hunter x Hunter series, which we're still working on, by the way. We're not done recording it. So in fact, I have a session on Thursday. I have to start recording the next group of episodes. We record them like 4 episodes at a time. No, it's great. It's what I do, and I've always loved to be. It took me a long time to figure out what it is that I like about this, and I like to tell stories. I like being the storyteller, and I like seeing the reaction of people to the stories we tell. So being a director is being the ultimate storyteller in the show, because you're the one that sets all the parameters. The actors are doing what they do, but you're the one that kind of sets the stage for it. So to me, it's terrific, and I have a great cast. Since it's interesting enough, this is a non-union show. So because it's a non-union show, we're trying a lot of new people out in that show because we can. And I teach, so some of them are my students. So it's kind of cool to get to be some people's first director, and that sort of thing. Most of them do okay, but some of them are really brilliant, and it's really kind of cool to get to sit in that seat and watch somebody new kind of blossom who you know is going to be huge later down the line. So, what's the other question? Can you record this one? Yeah, but not them, because they didn't give you permission. Tips to directing an actor. What most people want to do is they want to direct how the actor sounds. They want to tell them how to read the part, and because you have in your head how you hear that happening. The problem is, he's got a different personality, and so does he. So the way he hears it in his head is different. So what you want to direct is the emotion. Direct the feeling, not the line. So, because there's 5 or 6 ways that he can sound sad. So just be sad, but he could be devastated sad because this happened, and he'll express that. Yeah, exactly. So it's okay. There you go. See, it works. So you want to always don't get it stuck in your head how the line should sound. Get it stuck in your head how the line should feel and push for that. Because it's not going to sound like you think it's going to sound, but it's going to feel right, and that's when it's going to work.
Yeah, when I first started directing 150 years ago, and Chris Sabat gave me the best advice. He said, really listen to what the actor is giving you. It may not be what's in your head, but if it works just as well, go with them.
Because it's more true.
It's true, right? It comes from them, and you're using their palette to add to this. Also, actors have very fragile egos, and if you keep saying no, no, no over and again, they're going to break down and cry.
There was a director, did you remember Stu Rosen?
Oh yeah.
There was a director in town named Stu Rosen, and Stu had a reputation. I hadn't heard about it, but then I was working at Saban, and he was directing something at Saban, and I happened to have to drop off some scripts because I was going to have the studio after him. And so he was directing a line, and I listened, I swear to God, this was the direction. Okay, that was the high school version. Can I have the professional version now?
Oh, wow.
Can you suck a little less, please?
Yeah. Wow.
This was Stu, yeah. And the only reason he got anything out of the actors is he cast brilliant actors who would ignore it and just do their thing anyway. But can you imagine bringing a brand new actor and having somebody meet you that way? Yeah. It's tough.
He was the only director I ever heard say, can he do that with more talent?
Yeah. As soon as one of his cartoons was not a hit, nobody hired him again.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Yeah. We'll work our way back. Don't worry.
First question is for Sonny.
Yes.
They just announced this morning that Bardock is in Fighters.
Awesome!
Yeah, so are you hear that?
I hope so.
And so we hear a lot from Steve about Toonami, but I want to hear from Sonny and Tony, like the profound effect of Toonami, or even the Adult Swim block, anime block in general, and how that just like what the most presence, like what did you get the most out of that?
I think the most I got out of it was a career, because Toonami was really had a lot to do with the field of anime and supporting it. And I just think that it would have been harder for it to succeed without Toonami pushing it.
I agree. Toonami is where I have the. I don't have the Funimation channel available to me, so
I'll get it for you.
Toonami is the only place on broadcast or cable television where my stuff can play, so it's a huge deal. Without Toonami, I don't have a job. Thank God Netflix is jumping in the game, and Hulu and all those other guys, so that's helpful.
But they never would have been in the game had it not been for Toonami, right?
No. And now Sony is majorly in the game because they bought Funimation, and they're wait, because they're going to do big things, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I see a yellow arm with tentacles on it.
It was tentacles all along, man. Yes,
You're talking about?
First off, to Oliver, according to my friends, the way you made that sound, you sound like the voice, Gordon Ramsay anime edition, basically. The Shrinker edition.
For what voice?
Is that you?
That's what they were
The
saying.
director, Stu, he's pretty much the Gordon Ramsay of directors in this industry.
Oh, okay. I am not that. I do not swear. I don't yell at people. I don't berate them.
But yeah, my question was basically for anyone who's trying to get into voice acting, you do your demo, you send it in, and let's say you do get a callback. However, let's say this callback is all the way up in New York, or all the way, God forbid, up in Texas or California for some odd reason.
God forbid Texas.
Can we not go there? But no, so what if you do get a callback? But the means of travel, what would you recommend to people who want to, again, go into this wonderful, wonderful industry, but then as far as traveling, what would you recommend?
Generally, when you first get started, unless you live in the city you're going to record, they don't hire you.
Right.
Because they want to make sure, they can't pay for you to come out. They're not going to pay you enough to make it worth you flying or even driving if it's a significant amount of distance. So the thing is, you got to go to where the work is, ultimately.
Especially with at
And I
Funimation
hate,
with those
to,
projects.
I hate to tell you this, but the best place for a new actor to go is Texas.
Yeah. God forbid, but it's true. And the thing is that at our shows, we do so many of our shows are broadcast dubs. We have to have you in town because if there's a pickup, we're going to need you there right away. But I wouldn't recommend just up and moving to Texas. You know, establish yourself first. Get some local work. You know, get your feet wet, and so that you know what you can do, know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and know what your voice is. You know, if it's your first time to audition, and then they ask you to do callbacks, and you're worried about travel, you might need a few more years. You know.
Yeah. Plus, remember, one thing that you can work here, the bread and butter of most voice actors is commercials, not anime or animation.
That's true.
And so you can do that right where you live. You don't have to move anywhere. You just take voice
Greg
and...
Hauser said the same thing.
Yep, well, Greg Hauser's a smart man.
I'll let him say that.
Someone need that over here. Glasses, black shirt.
Okay.
Oh my God, there was two of you both. No wonder you got confused. No, I didn't realize the person in front of you also had a black top and glasses. No, please, I was talking to you.
Go for it. I wasn't ready. I wasn't never ready.
All right, so unnecessarily confusing, I'm sorry.
So, based on her question, what do y'all love about voice acting in general?
What do we love about it?
Voice acting.
The people, in every area of it, the people that we work with are amazing, and so much nicer than in most areas of entertainment.
Yeah.
I worked in the film business for many years, and there's a lot of mean people in the on-camera business. Voiceover industry, I think, as a whole, no matter where you're working, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't work in Texas, but they're a great group of people. They're just really good, down-to-earth people who love this stuff. And then getting to come to cons and meet you guys and to hear your stories is incredible. Everything else is just gravy.
Yeah, I mean, the people that I've worked with for 20 years, they're family to me, and it's a deep family connection with these people. And I remember at one time, because Funimation is a huge corporation, right? And one side of the building is all administrative, and the other side is creative. But they sometimes have policies that go through the whole building, you know, from HR. And so HR had said that we're not allowed to hug anymore.
Oh.
That lasted about a week.
Yeah.
Because we're like, that's not going to happen. Yeah.
For me, it's the fact that I always wanted to be an actor. From the time I was 10 or 11 years old and I got in front of an audience for the first time, I went, this is cool, this is what I want to do. And the first thing is I get to make my living doing what I like, rather than a cubicle or doing something that I hated, because I've done all kinds of other jobs that I hated. So that is, and the people too. It's one of the things that drew me to theater was the family that a play becomes. When you're doing a play with a good cast, and you're doing a longer run especially, you become family. It includes fighting, by the way, but you really become tight, and doing voiceover in this community has become that for me. Because it's the same roughly the same group of, 20 people out of 100 that we work with. And it really becomes close. But I have a theory as to why that is.
Why is that?
My theory is because nobody knows what we look like. So I know 3 people sound just like me. So if I'm a jerk, guess who's not going to get work? Because they'll hire them.
That's a good theory.
So we're really replaceable. So we have to be nice. If you're a jerk, you don't last in this business.
Another thing too is like, I'm probably exactly the same for everybody up here and anyone who does voice acting. I've never gone to work going, oh, I've got to go to work today. I am always excited when I have to act. Now, when I direct sometimes, it's like, oh, geez, I got a lot to do. But
depends on the actor I have in the booth.
That's true too. But as far as acting, it's like, it's just a joy to express yourself that way.
One other thing I'd like to add on to that too is a lot of people who have not worked in this business yet think that it's super exciting that we get to work with these big famous on-camera celebrities. I don't care who they are, as long as they're nice people. You know what really excited me about coming to this con more than anything was meeting this guy.
Me too?
It's so cool because I love his work, I love everything that he does, and he set the stage for Toonami, and I didn't know when I took over Tom that he even had a voice before I came in. I didn't know what Toonami was. And when I found out who he was, I felt guilty ever since. And
No, God, no.
But he's been so kind about it. And we've had a few interactions online.
You have been tremendous as Toonami Tom, hasn't he? My God, he's the voice of Cartoon Network.
Thank you for that. But honestly, this is one of the most exciting things for me in this career is to get to meet people like Sonny Strait. This is amazing. So.
Someone tweeted that there was going to be a panel with the three of us on here, and I was like, that's really happening?
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
Oh, it was you. Thank you.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, thank you, and I love you all for giving me a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for watching.
How about Blum on the back?
Oh, nice.
I actually wanted to ask you, which one of you two do you think does Lupin better?
I was hired to do Lupin once.
What?
I was hired to do Lupin once.
Well, you were.
A long time ago at Media Concepts, I think.
Oh,
yeah,
you were Lupin?
Edgar took over or something? Or did you take over?
I took over at episode 1.
Yeah, okay, so I was hired to do Lupin, and they didn't tell me that it was going non-union.
Right.
Until the day that we were recording. And so I couldn't do it.
That's how I got the part.
So
So you're unofficial.
No, you don't understand. I was I've never been more gobsmacked surprised in my life that I got that part, because I've never done comedy before.
I was thrilled that you did, because I love you. You know that I love you, and you did a brilliant job at it.
But I figured, I'm getting Goemon if I get anything, maybe get Jigen, but not likely because Epcar will play that.
I got kicked out of the building is what I got.
It's okay, you deserve it.
How about you?
Being that you guys were, you guys are both Toonami Tom, but before that there was Clay Croker as Moltar. And I know you guys...
I was the new Moltar. That was one of the first things I said. I'm the new Moltar.
But I also know Clay was one of my friends, and he, sadly, some of you may not know, he passed away 2 years ago. He was friendly. What did he ever say anything to you guys like saying, you've got my job now, so you better do it right?
Well, luckily, God forbid, I live in Texas, so I didn't have to face him.
And one last thing. I mean, what did you guys think of him as the early incarnation of Toonami? So what did you guys think of Moltar, hosting Toonami?
Oh, I thought that was cool. I love Space Coast to Coast anyway, so that was cool.
And he did so much more than voice, too. The guy, the Toonami wouldn't have existed without him. So.
Especially the fact that he kicked in the door at some senior executive's office basically told the two Adult Swim was canceled. He literally said, over my dead body.
Wow.
He learns all he went, George, the guy that was Space Coast, learns all he said, we're off the edges. 5 minutes, walked in, kicked the guy's door open, and literally said, how dare you try to cancel us? You're putting this guy in the
I did not know that.
Wow, that would have gotten me arrested.
It's a good story.
Glad I didn't piss him off.
Yeah.
How about you, Rick? Yes, you. Pfizer, right? Yes.
Okay, this is going to be a question for all 3 of you. First off,
Always the best.
Not long ago, I had this girl come up to me and said, okay, you love doves, right? And I said, yeah. And she just goes on like, okay, is dove just more than just voice acting? And I was literally steamed up internally. The minute my earrings came out, I had this going on. Okay, doves are more than just voice acting alone. You've got your ADR directors, your scripts, your editing. This girl said, well, when she takes the script, I lose my mind. Can you believe it? And I just grab her by the collar and said, do not shame the talent and effort and appreciation goes into stuff and effort. I swear to God.
Let's not piss her off.
Whatever you say is right.
Okay, so how does it feel about being the big
great, because that's what you want to hear.
Feels good.
It's a great tradition that we when I was growing up, I didn't think about being a voice actor, because to be a voice actor you had to be Mel Blanc, you had to be able to do Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny and those silly voices, and then to find out that actually no, they just need real actors who can actually act, and then if you can do a funny voice, that's great. Was really cool, and so I feel like we're a very small part of a much larger tradition that's been going on since there was audio and cartoons and things like that, since the Steamboat Willie showed up and started.
Since the Greeks wore masks.
Yeah, okay.
Well, think about it, because these characters, we wear masks to our personalities.
Actually, you're absolutely right.
Funnel through these faces on the screen.
Yeah.
There's
actually some voice acting teachers that use mask work in their training, which I think is really cool.
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I do Commedia for the first day of my advanced acting classes.
Wow, that's so cool. We need to talk about that.
I was just going to say, I didn't even know that you could make a living being a voice actor when I got into it. I just did it because I love to do it, and I love the people involved. And I had 3 other jobs to support that. And it's always been a philosophy of mine that you do what you love to do no matter what, and then you do what you need to do to support it. And it's worked out really well.
Although I will say, I have nothing against people who are just sub-viewers or whatever. I mean, that's fine, I get it. There's a lot of original subs that I loved, and it was okay with the dub. And sometimes I think the dubs are better, but it doesn't matter. Just don't be hitting people. That's good. That's a
I stopped reading reviews when I read that I should fall under a bus and die.
So this question is for Steve, but I know all of you are Toonami Tom. Okay, so when you got the opportunity to work with Logic and on his album, were there any other rappers that kind of like tried to get you to be that same person on their album?
No, Logic was the first person who contacted me, and I played in a funk band in the 80s, but I really never got into rap, so I was wondering why this 25-year-old genius rapper would be interested in my old ass. It was amazing, though. No, he was really the first and only one who seemed to be interested in using me for any of his projects, and I'm really grateful for it. It worked out beautifully, and he's my brother. He's one of my dearest friends in the world. Peace, love, and positivity. Swag!
This is for Steve. How did you first get the role of Wolverine? What are your favorite and least favorite Wolverine performances? And with Disney now owning Fox, can we expect another X-Men Part 2 soon?
Oh man, it's a complicated question. First time I played Wolverine was in X-Men Legends. Favorite version of Wolverine? Is that what you're asking?
Favorite and least favorite roles that you did Wolverine?
Oh man, favorite was probably Hulk versus. Just because Wolverine was at his most feral, and it reminded me of the original comic books, and he got to draw blood. And I got to get really nasty with it. That was awesome. Least favorite was probably any time he was going for 6 hours, because it just, my uvula was dragging behind me when I would leave the studio. I was blood. I had blood in my throat. And my healing factor is not as good as his. So, and I'm excited to see what happens. I mean, we've sort of been on hiatus because of the movies. Fox pulled any usage of Wolverine out of the fray, and so I've been sitting waiting by the phone, hoping that I get to play him again, and I hope it happens again and really soon. Still waiting by the phone. I'm ready, bub.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, in your families, maybe your children, nieces, nephews, do they ever come up to you like, can you teach me how to be a famous voice actor or anything? Do you have any relatives who are like, oh sure, or oh no?
They'll never know you're famous.
My grandson mostly just gives me a barrage of who would win in a fight, Dragon Ball Z characters, and it happens all day long. But he's 8, and so I'm like, yeah, okay, let's explore that idea. Krillin versus Boo.
could do it in Fighters.
Both my kids are grown now. Both of them actually are in the business. My son is a gaffer. He does the lighting for the TV show The Brave. And my daughter's an actress and does production and stuff like that. So most of them while they were growing up, were just kind of going, okay, Dad, yeah, that's great, cool, bye. You know, they weren't that interested in it. And the first time my son heard my voice on television was Robotech. And he was young at the time. And he goes, "Is that your voice, Dad?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And he walked away. A few years later, I did an animatic, a Jungle Book animatic that ended up getting produced and published and won an award and all this stuff. And they turned it into a book. So I was going through the galleys of the book, kind of reading and doing corrections, and my son looks and says, "What is that?" I tell him what it is. He says, "Oh, you're an author?" That he was impressed with. When you grow up around it, it's not as special, and that's pretty much why. So it becomes that.
My wife said something similar to me because a friend of ours introduced us, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, he's a voice actor on cartoons. He's on whatever this is. He's also a published comic book artist." And she was like, "What? He's published his own comic books?" So I knew she was for me.
D. Bradley Baker, who is one of the greatest voice actors in the world. He's so funny. He tells a story about reading to his daughters, and he does a bazillion different voices, and he does creatures. He's amazing. And whenever he would read them stories when they were little, he'd act out all the characters, and they'd go, "Just do it normal, Daddy." All they wanted was Daddy. They didn't want anything else. My kids were kind of the same way. I would read to them in character voices, and it was fun, it was cool, but they weren't really terribly impressed because that's just normal to them. When it became impressive to them was when I think they were in high school and they realized that I was a voice in a bunch of video games that their friends were into. All of a sudden it gave them street cred. That's when it changed and they really started paying attention. And the early work that I did, they were so violent. A lot of the anime were so violent that I wouldn't let the kids watch them anyway. So it took later on, it took several years until I'd work on something like Digimon that they could actually watch it. I wouldn't feel bad.
When I read stories to my grandson, he's the opposite and worst about it. He goes, "No, not that voice. No, lower it a little bit." And I'm like,
so he's going to be a director.
He directs me, yeah.
That was the best.
He's the worst director.
The best training I ever got was going to read books at my children's classes in school because they have no filters at all.
No.
And there's nothing like a third grader. You're reading. I was reading something like Dr. Seuss and doing my best work. I thought doing it. And they go, "No, Mr. Blum, that was terrible. Do it again, but do it better." Okay, thanks, Steve Rosen.
Who's this kid? Red jacket there.
So this question goes out for all of you. What's your favorite role you played until now? And Steve, you can't say Zeb because we're not done with him. And you
Favorite what?
Favorite
role. Oh, okay.
And Steve.
What can I say, Zeb?
Yeah, you can't say Zeb because we're not done with him, and you can't say Starscream because he's my favorite.
My favorite was Toonami Tom, and then he
Oh my god.
No. My favorite is Goro Sensei. That character feels the most like me, and his teaching style is similar to mine. Except I don't teach my kids to kill me, just to replace me in the industry.
I'm so blown away that you're a grandfather. That's amazing.
I'm 53, so
wow.
I have 3.
I'm older than you. I haven't done that yet. My kids.
What?
Yet my kids aren't ready yet.
Oh, don't rush them.
No, I'm not. No, I want them to get lives independent so that I don't have to pay for them anymore.
That's right. I pay for everybody.
How do you choose a favorite character? That's really hard. The one that changed my life personally and professionally most would be Spike from Cowboy Bebop. For the simple reason that I learned how to act while I was working on that show. I had done these big, broad, crazy characters, which to me were easy and natural, but when I had to get vulnerable, especially in the Cowboy Bebop movie, that was a painful place for me to go to, and it was the essence of acting as far as I'm concerned, is really finding something that is scary and vulnerable, most vulnerable to you, and be able to share that out loud.
You did have the best voice director in town working with
And I was, yes, and I met Mary Elizabeth McGlynn there, who we've been friends for about 20 years, and she is now my fiance in real life. And she played Julia on the show. She was my love interest on the show, so talk about a show that keeps on giving. 20 years later, and we're still talking about it, so that's pretty good. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, for me it was, I have three, because there are three. One is Rick Hunter from Robotech. Thanks. Because it was the first, it was the series, it was the one that changed my life too. My first series, I was given a role I was absolutely not qualified to play by a producer who saw something in me. And I will be forever grateful to Carl, rest in peace, that he took a chance on me. The next one is Lupin. And mostly because I'd never done, thank you, because I'd never done comedy before. So I little bits, but I had to carry the comedy on the show, and it was so much fun. And Richard, I learned a lot from Richard Epcar, who kind of coached me through some of the timing and stuff.
Yeah, he's funny.
He's very funny. In fact, the writer on that show was, and I'm not, yeah, I can say it. He was terrible. He would write these awful jokes and these Cold War jokes that made no sense, and Richard rewrote them all in the studio, and that's why the show worked.
That's how I directed too. I directed Lupin, it was like we wrote everything in the booth.
Thank you. And then finally, Harry from Gungrave. It was the first villain I played. Thank you. And I never played a villain before, and it has started a string of villain roles for me. But it was the most difficult role I ever played because he was a young teenager who was likable and kind of sexy, yet he was a vicious killer who worked for a mob and he kills his brother. So it was a really difficult acting challenge, and for an actor that's the best day, is when you have a really difficult acting challenge. So those are mine.
Hat guy here.
Great question.
All right, hang on, let him ask and then you get yours.
Oh,
yeah,
you're.
Two
shows that would cross.
Two shows that would cross over in any genre? In anime or animation?
Wow.
That's an interesting question. We'd have to think about that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to do some live action versions of some of the anime that I've done, but that's about the closest I can think of.
Cowboy Bebop and Star Wars.
So does Spike have to steal a prop or whatever?
Something, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But the poster for Ready Player One, the movie, has a picture of a swordfish in it.
Oh, really?
Yes, there's already some crossover happening. I'm excited.
Maybe Dragon Ball Z, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That'd be interesting. Krillin playing cello with Yo-Yo Ma.
I don't know, Power Rangers and Shakespeare, how's that?
It's kind of the same thing there.
Everyone dies at the end.
Shakespeare with putties.
Picture of Dorian Gray and Full Metal Alchemist. I knew you had one. Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, with that guy in the back.
Wolverine question, what was it?
When you did Wolverine and the X-Men, primarily more talking than he's used to, how did you get to express him better as a teacher?
First of all, I love the way he slowly approaches you as he asks the question. That was very dramatic.
Yeah. You're saying because he had to talk more?
Well, yeah, most of his roles, he was never much of a talker, more of a brawler. But then Wolverine and the X-Men, when he became a teacher, he had to express himself more.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable for Wolverine because he doesn't like being the leader. He likes sort of stepping in, tearing things up, and leaving as fast as he can. So, yeah, that was an interesting challenge. It was a little bit of a different take on him. So, I just like that they brought me in on every episode because I made lots of money. No, it was just fun to get to flesh a character like that out, especially a legacy character, and to have a new take on it. That's always an exciting challenge. Thanks for watching, Bob. Your best there is what you do.
Okay, yes. Black shirt, water. Yes. You keep looking back.
I was at the Cowboy Bebop panel last night, and Steve, you mentioned about Tony's joy in making your coworkers uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
So what's some of the hijinks that went on behind the lines?
My favorite show ever in that regard is working with Mr. Tony Oliver on a show called Gurren Lagann. And filthy. It became a challenge to me to change it, to have an alt version of every line that was so wrong that he would turn purple and squirm in his chair. And Tony is just this, he's this dignified, wonderful, highly educated director with Shakespeare training, and he's a classically trained artist who is incredibly respectful of actors. I think it's safe to say that you love actors, and he's very polite. He never cusses. And the cleanest thing I ever said on that show was, when you screw it in, give it a hard, manly twist, honey. So just imagine 50 Shades of nasty, nastier than that, and I would go there.
And then you and Crispin kind of got into an outtake battle, yeah.
Crispin and I would leave these little presents for each other that were increasingly more uncomfortably horrible, and Tony had to process all of that. And I just remember on the breaks, we would walk out on the breaks and Tony would go, oh God, I have to wash. Horrible. We probably had enough material to make a whole
We did. I actually had a DVD of a bunch of that, and it finally broke. It got broken, and I haven't been able to get to who it has it.
Oh,
and I can't ask Anaplex for it because it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that was so much fun.
Ask your way if you can. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of leaving little presents, I was directing Sean Schimmel. You guys know who Sean Schimmel is? Goku. And he was having intestinal issues. He was farting in the booth.
Oh, he and Storage. They should get together. Michael Storage. The two of them should.
Yeah. But luckily he kept the door closed. But he left in a hurry and he shut it really quick. And then I went to get some coffee. And then I went back and had to direct Laura Bailey. And I'd forgotten what had happened in the booth. And so I'm saying, okay, Laura, for this character, I'm going to need you to, and I hear, what is that smell? And I went, oh my God, get out, abort. She said, what was that? And I said, Sean was farting in the booth. She started crying. And then I told Sean about it the next day, and he went, yes. Goku is an evil bastard. I just want to say that.
All people to walk into the booth, too.
Right, like Laura.
Oh my God, poor Laura. Oh, I'm going to talk to her about that. One more question? That's it. Wow, that's so fast.
Yeah.
Oh, 12 minutes.
I got the high side. We got it. Yeah. There. We have to follow what they tell us.
Sorry. Okay.
So, get better aside, what's the weirdest direction you've ever been?
Can you do it harder but more soft? And maybe more purple instead of blue.
I think you're the same director I had.
Same director I had.
Yeah?
Happy but the sad. That was fun.
Who was my director from her?
This is like a tree. This is not a tree. But together.
I got it. Yeah. And then after I finished, it's like you read my mind.
Oh my God. Let's, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Out of all the supposed empty voice lines, which one's your favorite antagonist character besides Starsqueak?
Starsqueak, that's what his mother used to call him. Only when he was bad. There is no one else besides Starscream when you address Starscream.
I think the closest antagonist I ever had was Bardock. I'm usually playing happy-go-lucky guys. Yeah. And he's not really an antagonist, but he's certainly an anti-hero. Certainly a redemption story, I think.
My weirdest villain was for an American cartoon called Romiti, and his name was Obscurio, which I thought was sounding like a great cereal. You know, Obscurios, you can't see them, but they're there, you know. and Obscurios. And I went in, when I went in, because my first series regular in an American cartoon, after 30 years, I finally got one. And I'm playing the villain in season 2. And I came in all prepared. I worked on my depth and all my layering and all of that stuff. And I went and I started doing it, and they said, stop, what's going on? What are you doing? I said, well, I'm doing this, so I need you loud and pissed off. So that's what I did. I was loud and pissed off. And it came out wonderful. We spent most of the time enjoying the script and enjoying each other because the show was very strange.
Yeah. We have time for one more?
We're supposed to be done.
Who's holding time
right
for
now?
us?
The person in the back, but they gave me the high sign of 5 till.
That's like
5 till 45.
Okay. Oh, 5 till. We're rebels. One more. Okay. Choose.
What's the hardest voice you've ever had to for yourself? If you had to pick a voice that was difficult for you.
Obscurio. Wolverine hurts. It sounds pretty, I know, but it hurts. And also, fun fact, every time I take a swipe, I fart. So if you listen really, really carefully, you'll just hear.
Usopp was the hardest voice I had to do.
I mean, I can do Krillin all day, but Usopp has that hitch in his voice, and that really hurts after a while.
He screams everything he says for some reason. But the voice that was the worst, I actually had to quit, and it was President Mike from My Hero Academia. I know, right? Well, you've been listening to Dave Trosco this whole time, so shut up. But
I mean, the voice is like this most of the time. It's just, you know, old school radio voice, right? But he started screaming at that point.
it hurts just doing that. I don't know why, it just sits in a bad place in my throat, but it gave me laryngitis that turned into pneumonia, and I said, that's it, I'm not doing that character anymore. Yeah, sorry.
Sometimes it's okay to say no. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you very much.